Agriculture is a Mahasagar, it's a massive ocean. And if that ocean of knowledge is to be reduced to certain FAQs, it won't work. Chatbot, which you are calling MahaVISTAAR AI, it's launched by a government organization, get more than 1.5 million downloads. You would be able to imagine 5,000 FAQs. And the farmer would come along and ask another question which might not be sitting into that FAQs. Credible content may not be available. Even when it was available, it was very, very hard for the farmer to sift between what is credible, what is not credible. And so we realized that there has to be a single credible farmer facing app. Welcome to Diaries, where we talk about projects which has impact beyond the headlines. Today we have with us Mr. Parimal Singh, who is the project director of Nanaji, Deshmukh, Krishi, Sanjeevani project, which is also called the Project on Climate Resilient Agriculture.
Yes.
Welcome to the discussion.
Thank you, Vikas ji. Always a joy to talk to you.
So, in fact, today I wanted to talk to you about some of the very interesting things you have been doing within your department. One of them being artificial intelligence based chatbot, which you are calling MahaVISTAAR AI.
Yes.
It is very interesting to learn that a chatbot which is launched by a government organization has been able to get more than 1.5 million downloads within a very short span of time after its launch. So I just wanted to know what was the strategic intent behind launching this chatbot.
So basically what we launched was a farmer app which was strengthened by a chatbot, and we launched it on 21st of May, and over the past few months we have got almost 17 to 18 lakh downloads now, and almost 3.5 lakh unique users of the chatbot itself. That is quite promising, and it is something which we wish to take further forward to the farmers. And the idea was around the fact that when we studied this landscape, there were a lot of apps both in the government sector and in the private sector, where any number between 10,000 to 1 lakh were reaching out to the apps and trying to have some kind of a access to credible content. And what we realized through that landscape was that credible content may not be available. Even when it was available, it was very, very hard for the farmer to sift between what is credible and what is not credible. There were videos on YouTube, there was information, there were other context. The other context also arose out of the fact that even when the government had a lot of credible content, what was a pipeline based on which you could reach out to the people? A lot of very interesting content would be created by the government, and it would be circulated on various WhatsApp groups which were being circulated. And so giving of advisories, sharing of content, sharing of videos, everything was being done, maybe through messages or maybe launching it onto a portal and hoping that people come to it, and which was not a very smart idea to be on the point. And so we realized that there has to be a single credible farmer facing app and a farmer facing chatbot. And the choice of a chatbot was under the context that let us not have some kind of a golden FAQ. And it arose out of a understanding that Krishi or agriculture is what we always call a Mahasagar. It's a massive ocean. And if that ocean of knowledge is to be reduced to certain FAQs, it won't work. You would be able to imagine 5,000 FAQs, and the farmer would come along and ask another question which might not be sitting into that FAQs. And we also realize that the farmer is not going to ask you one question. Once you answer his query, he might have another question. And so around it, the context of validated content was absolutely necessary. The context of a pipeline was absolutely necessary. And the gains that generative AI had brought to us, we had to stop thinking in old ways and maybe try to provide a solution which would use the power of generative AI and which would use the power of the various APIs that the government had access to all of which had validated knowledge, which had credible knowledge to reach out to the farmers.
Good to know, sir. I think when you were talking about the chatbot, there are two things you emphasized on. The first one was the credible content.
Yes.
Can you tell us how do you make this content credible? Since you said this is an ocean of information.
Yes.
How, as an end user, I would know that this is a credible content, and what all you've done to do that?
For anybody who is building a solution like that, it is very, very seductive for us to simply reach out to internet content. But internet content may not be correct. Internet may have a lot of true knowledge, good knowledge, but it might also have a lot of knowledge which might not be true. And that is arising out of the problems with the source itself. And so one of the decisions that we took was that let us not go the easy way, which is to access the whole of the internet and simply provide answers. And so we said we will not go beyond what is validated by the ICR institutions and the state agriculture universities. Maharashtra has 4 state agriculture universities. And in a sense, they were our real heroes they always have been our real heroes in creating content, which is validated, born out of a long legacy of a lot of field research and understanding of what stands true and what does not stand true. And very interestingly, they had very interesting book, each one of those universities, which had almost all the answers to the question that farmers have. 500 pages or so of a content. And of course, other ancillary content. And we realized that there was a lot of wisdom in that. And that wisdom may not be reaching out to the farmers because extension has its limitations. And not everybody is going to come to read your book. And so we reached out to the universities and said, can we ingest it? And can we have guardrails around it, which will ensure, one, that the system does not hallucinate. Secondly, the system does not access anything which is not validated. Similarly, to access things like weather, things like warehousing knowledge, things about fertilizer calculators, for example, things of the soil health card. Each one of them was gathered from a source which was either from the government of Maharashtra or the government of India or anything which could be well validated. And around it, the answers were there. So it could not be that we provide a chatbot which simply gives you any answer in agriculture, but out you come with a question on Sholay and it gives you the answer about what Jai and Viru were doing at a particular time. So in that sense, we ensured that a lot of guardrails were very, very necessary. So this was the context of validated context. The second issue was, despite providing validated context, you have to be aware, you have to be alert. You cannot assume that yes, the chatbot necessarily always would still deliver answers. After all, there is generative AI behind it. Could the chatbot go wrong? So a very, very strong and motivated team behind the scenes kept on working at it, seeing the answers, tuning the system, and trying to understand what goes wrong, what goes right, so that most of the times we co-write. The third context was a feedback system. The feedback system would be coming from the farmers themselves. We do have a caveat emptor, of course, and around it, we also ask for feedbacks. And I'm happy to state that almost 98% of the feedback has always been positive with this app, with this chatbot. And so it gives us some confidence in saying, yes, whatever the farmer is getting is pretty validated. The chatbot often also suggests to the person when it is not able to answer a particular question that, yes, you should be reaching out to your extension agent who might be having certain more updated knowledge, certain more validated knowledge.
So, since you said that there are guardrails you built around it, and you also have your universities who've been looking at authenticity or the correctness of the content, some kind of accountability mechanism you built in this system, so that if some feedback comes and the system needs to be corrected,
yes,
are there some designated mechanisms through which this continuous feedback loop works?
So, as I said, first of all, the human in the loop is there. There are people who are checking this and they keep on checking it. And we say that, okay, certain sample checking is necessarily required. But we also are thinking of the long term. How do we ensure also that this checking is also aided by AI? So, there could be certain masters who are checking the answers of the model, and saying that, okay, in comparison, here is what is going wrong, what is being missed out, whether there is misattribution. So work is going on around those contexts also, so that the humans who are checking it should also be helped with the help of AI to point out that yes, it went wrong there. Look, it introduced a word which probably does not exist in that language. Because one of our basic context or challenges always has been that we should be able to give the answer to the farmer in the language in which he prefers. And so the context that we should be able to get the Marathi right, the language right. And this is a concern which anybody in any state who is going to try to apply a similar system has to be well aware of, after all. And there are other contexts, of course, which we can talk about later, the context of dialect, the context of telephony, the context of voice around it. We are working on voice, for example. We have already initiated a pilot around push telephony, which arises out of the MahaVISTAAR system to reach out a one-way communication to farmers, like alerts, pest and disease advisories, and a two-way communication, which is mediated through the chatbot and through a language model.
Thank you, sir. In fact, you have already answered a question which I was about to ask as to how do farmers who don't have smartphones access these services. You have already answered that. I would now like to know that, as you said in the beginning, this is not just a golden FAQ, but this is basically curation of data and content around some of the services farmers might require. Can you, sir, provide a list of services or the number of services which are currently provided by MahaVISTAAR AI chatbot?
So the AI chatbot can provide you information about warehouses, about mandi prices, about weather alerts and forecasts, about fertilizer calculators, about the soil health card if it exists for a person. It can talk about the various schemes a person has accessed or is going to access in the context of where his particular scheme application is, or at what stage it has matured, when will he be able to get a subsidy for a particular scheme, what would he be most suitable for. But it uses a lot of generative AI to combine these contexts to answer very, very, in a sense, a slightly more complex question. So should I spray? So my knowledge about the farmer's location or field and what is the weather forecast can help me to predict whether he should spray tomorrow or not. Or the context that a farmer comes and not only asks for mandi prices, but he says what were the trends over the past 1 month in the particular commodity that he was asking for, and it can answer. It can answer practically all the contexts of SOPs in a particular crop, the nature of pest and diseases, what a particular pest looks like, what a particular disease looks like when it is translated onto the. So the idea is that whatever information has been ingested into the system, generative AI provides a number of contexts to it, a number of inferences to it. So that's also something which we look at. But going forward, and we are working at these contexts, ultimately the context of AI for every acre that we are pointing at, the farmer would be satisfied with generic knowledge only till a certain extent. And then we have to go on to specific knowledge. And a number of consortia are working around providing, to the extent possible, much more granular advisories. So whether it be the weather grid, the minimum weather grid, which we can use for pest and disease identification or forecast, whether it is the crop SAP or the crop surveillance system alerts that we can reach out to the farmers. In all these things, we are trying to go as granular as possible. We have a project, for example, with one of our partners, which is an ICR agency, the National Bureau of Soil Survey, where we are trying to work out on what is the potential context of the soil of a particular parcel, what is the crop most suited for that kind of a soil, and what are the kind of mitigation measures if a person does not take that kind of a crop. And all this could be targeted through MahaVISTAAR, placed on the particular parcel. And in a sense, a geospatial context also can be brought onto it, and a predictive context can be also brought onto it.
Till now, I was thinking that you're probably using lots of curated content and based on which you're providing services. But Now that you've talked about very farmer centric services, which requires not just the content, but to also access to certain kind of data sets, be them the identity of the farmer, his location, also the weather in that area, which has to come through some IoT sensors. Can you also tell us what kind of databases or the tech stacks, so to say, whether it is Agri Stack or any other data sets to which MahaVistar has been already integrated so far?
Yeah, so as I told you that we have access to the State Warehousing Corporation data. We have access to the IMD data, the IMD forecast, for example. We are also trying to integrate the Mausamgram, which is a much more granular grid that the IMD is talking about, so that we can go further down. The AgriStack itself, which can help us to know the context of the farmer, and we will be integrating very soon the digital crop survey. So it helps me to know what he was growing last time, what he is most likely to grow now. And we will also be using telephony to, in a way, gather early in the season what the farmer is growing. For example, the coming Kharif, we will be trying this experiment and trying to collect this data, not at the end of the season where DCS would become more of a post-mortem, but right at the beginning if possible, so that we can actually direct very, very specific advisories to the farmer. So if I know the soil of the farmer, if I know the crop of the farmer that he is growing, immediately a lot of solutions which are very, very specific to him would be arriving to him. So all these data stacks and other data stacks around the crop surveillance systems, around the entire geospatial remote sensing context are being integrated as we speak.
I think, again, every time you say something that actually is a cue for a next thing to ask. So you said you're providing lots of services and on a very personalized manner, but you also said that, because your system has capabilities to analyze data and predict. Are you also sending on a proactive basis some alerts or messages to the people based upon what your AI system throws up?
Yes, because we have an app too, and everybody doesn't come on to a chatbot is something which we have to acknowledge. If 18 lakh people are have downloaded the app, and if almost 10 to 12,000 people are asking questions on the chatbot on a daily basis, I should use my app for a very, very focused context of reaching out on a very specific basis for various messaging. And so those push notifications are happening. A pilot around push telephony is happening in 2 districts for Rabi crops already. So for gram and wheat, we are doing it in 2 districts. And a pilot for telephony is happening in 2 districts for two-way communication around this context. Now, so it's a choice that we are making, that yes, what would be the multimodal ways of delivery to the farmer of various advisories, various knowledge bases and SOPs. I think the context is that, and this is true, that our farmers know a lot about farming, and we also have a lot to learn from them and their traditional wisdom. But it is also true that access to formal knowledge is sometimes restricted. And this is more so even in certain segments, for example, women. Now, for example, women, for them, cultivation is a very, very important part of their life. And among the cultivators in India, probably more than 50% would be women. But they do not hold access to land, and therefore they do not have access to formal knowledge. Now, contexts like MahaVistar, especially when they're mediated through a female extension worker, for example, the Krishi Tais or the Krishi Sakhis, can become a very, very important addition to their life. Mobile penetration in Maharashtra is quite significant, and many women have access to it. And around it, I can reach out a large number of messages, which could be also very, very gender specific. So ultimately, our aim is to create personas. I do not want a single message to go to 1.5 crore people as a bulk message. Ultimately, we should be able to understand the persona. It is a female farmer. Is it a female extension worker? Is it a male extension worker? Is it a dairy worker? Is it a poultry farmer? And around it, we should be able to push notifications. And this is what we have started to do already as pilots. And we are confident that very soon those personas will be able to help us to give very, very specific messages to everybody. Otherwise, messaging also can bring out a lot of fatigue. People might be very, very tired receiving phone calls and saying that, okay, आपने ये भी भेज दिया, मैं तो cotton नहीं उगाता हूँ. But why are you sending me something about cotton? And somebody who does not have a field, why are we sending a particular message? So that kind of a context, I think, is now increasingly becoming possible because of the integration of data context.
In terms of usage and impact, you said about 17 lakh downloads. Do you also collect the usage numbers on a daily basis or a weekly basis?
Yes.
And do we have some feedback already coming from the farmers? That is one question. Second, since you talked about Krishi ties and all that, then are you then saying that this system is not only used by farmers, but also by the department to provide advice, including the extension workers?
Yeah, so I'll answer the second question first, and thankful you asked me, because one of the things that this is very, very useful to is all the extension workers, and I'll tell you the reason. We do not understand this fact that, again, I'm repeating that the amount of knowledge in agriculture is a never-ending context.
Yes.
And even the most brilliant agriculture student who's done a PhD in agriculture won't be able to answer all the questions that we are talking about. इसमें कितना fertilizer डालना है, इसमें कितना pesticide डालना है. There are 100 crops. There are 100 kinds of pests and diseases. How do you intervene? And often extension fails because of lack of confidence. So if I, as a digital pocketbook, if I provide to the extension worker something which he can confidently punch in the question, somebody asks him कि इसके लिए क्या करना है, and he says, okay, wait, I'll show it to you, and it punches in and an answer comes. Two things happen. One, there is a lot of confidence and trust which is built. And at the end, there is a context that somebody is pointing out, this has been downloaded from a particular university. We always give the source because there is a context of responsibility also that which we want to create. That, look, this is not the answer that MahaVISTAAR is giving. This is a particular university which is giving it. So in that sense, there's a lot of trust and confidence which is created. This confidence can be, in a sense, bringing out the seeds of a very silent revolution. We are hopefully within a month or so trying to roll out a pocket diary, which is a digital pocket diary for the extension worker. Suppose an extension worker is mapped to 4 villages. He will see MahaVISTAAR very, very differently. And if he chooses the village weather forecast would be there for his taking. The kind of soil profiles across the village are there, which would be available to him. What is he supposed to do on a particular day? That diary would be available to him. And what are the challenges and contexts? Even if I have done a micro level planning for the village, so then I can say that, look, this is your village profile, this is what you set out to do, this is what you have achieved. So the possibilities are immense, and around that, the extension worker being helped by this kind of a digital notebook, this kind of a digital pocketbook, would in a sense change extension the way it is, and it would also help him or her to be guided about what is the significance of the very data that he or she collects.
You have been implementing this program last 6 months now?
More than that.
More than that.
Yeah.
So, based upon this implementation for more than 6 months, are there any challenges which you encountered during implementation?
Yes.
This is a very exciting thing for many states or maybe for many countries to replicate. So if somebody is replicating this program or thinking of replicating this in their state or a country, what are the 3 or 4 pointers based on your learning you will provide to your peers globally who would want MahaVISTAAR kind of a thing in their own country or state?
So I think again the context of trust is very, very important here, and the trust, if your app or your solution, your chatbot would work if it is something which is trustworthy, it is validated. But a lot of hard work, actually the technology stack is not the biggest challenge. I'm sure that with the way technology is changing on a daily basis, and the fact that it is replicable, the fact that it is transferable, so that challenge is not the main challenge. The challenge arises out of the fact that you are working in a particular language which is local, and you are trying to bring the system to an inference layer which first understands English and thereafter translates it into the local language. We initially faced massive challenges. We realized that even the Krishi Dhanandinis that we had been made, for example, in Corel Draw, because nobody had thought that it would be one day ingested into a system which was different. And once we had to convert it, we had to proofread it, we had to ingest it, we had to see whether the ingestion was right, and thereafter working very, very hard with the system to understand what are those guardrails that we need to do. There are hundreds of guardrails that you are supposed to do. Debiasing, in a sense, that entire system for various contexts, make it inclusive. Ensuring after the rollout, how do you reach out to the people? How do you help them to use it? How do you help them to appreciate it? How do you help them to understand that yes, there is a credibility to it which you have to realize? How do you create trust among the extension, the persons themselves? So there was this entire life cycle approach around which, and I would suggest that for this validation, a lot of hard work, a motivated team, maybe a PME who drives it, and good partners. Again, probably every state may not have very, very strong technological context. Getting in good partners from the various sectors, including the foundations, the non-governmental sectors, would be a good idea. People also to look at the context and examine the context of inclusivity, outreach, accessibility, low resource network areas. All these things are to be considered as we roll out. So the design right from the beginning has to be very inclusive, with a context of accessibility, with a context of updation. Now, for example, the entire context of whatever the content is, content always does not remain fresh. What is the responsibility of various stakeholders to update that content also becomes very, very important. So it's an entire ecosystem where all those stakeholders who either are providers of knowledge or those who access knowledge have to be involved and to be engaged with. So this is something which they should do.
One thing, sir, out of curiosity, the technical thing, would it be right to say that in the process of doing all this curation, having human in the loop, etc., has it also resulted in enhancing the reasoning capacity of the algorithm?
It would be hard for me to judge on that on a very, very technological context, but I am sure that when that feedback comes, the system can learn, the system can be taught, systems can be trained to do better. Of course, that is a big possibility. It's something now more than 1.5 million questions have been asked in MahaVISTAAR, which is a massive database to understand where the systems can go wrong or right. So that is something which certainly can happen, can make the system much more reasoned, provided the guardrails are fine. Yeah.
Thank you so much for explaining about MahaVISTAAR AI chatbot. I think, as per my experience, this is probably one of its kind in entire Asia, where you have 1.5 million farmers and the government employees using it. And it is not just answering random questions, it is also personalized based upon lots of data, etc., which actually means that in the back end, you might be collecting lots of data. And what I have come to know that Maharashtra is building a MahaAgri data exchange, which is not just a digital platform, but it is being built as a digital public infrastructure. And it has lots of architectural principles which allow not just the government agencies but also the private players to get DPGs around it, MahaVISTAAR being one. Can you tell us the strategic vision behind creating this entire data exchange as a DPI?
So we are building the Agri Data Exchange along with our partners in IISc Bangalore. And the whole context about data, and so if we talk about MahaVISTAAR or any other context of building any product, data is absolutely important. Good data is absolutely important, but data is very, very hard to access. And we increasingly need to move to an ecosystem where data can be accessed easily. There is a certain degree of data discipline around the entire ecosystem. And this is something which cannot be ad hoc. It cannot be based on good relationship that you pick up a phone and say, yaar, mujhe ye data chahiye. I do not want that kind of a system, because ad hocism would mean that as the person changes, data might not be accessed. But there is a larger problem. The larger problem is that you might not know that a particular data exists. So you might not think of a product or a solution that can arise out of it. And so innovation itself gets stunted. And so therefore, we thought that an agri data exchange would be quite appropriate to the agricultural ecosystem where there's so much of knowledge. How is that knowledge kept, however, till now has been a problem. Let us think that our universities are repositories of a large amount of research data, large amount of knowledge products. Some of them might be kept very, very well. They might be kept very cleanly. There would be a lot of data discipline, but not all data has been kept like this. So even the context of data remaining safe, data not disappearing because of human errors or technical failures is also very, very relevant, because all this is in a way national wealth. It is gold. So the first context around agri data exchange is definitely that can we ensure access to data? Can we ensure data available to the people? Can everybody who wishes to access data may be able to know where that data is, how the structure of that data is, what are the attributes of the data, and what is the data that a person needs? Once that happens, both in a sense in the back end and in the front end, a lot of silent revolutions start happening. One of this is around the fact that how we collect data in a certain sense changes. We generally collect data in the government systems or the university systems for a particular purpose. Let us say the crop surveillance system is concerned. In the crop surveillance system, we generally collect data of crop pest and diseases for forewarning. But let us assume that tomorrow there was another product which could have been developed and which was image-based pest and disease data detection, which would be coming out of the same process. And immediately, once productization is possible because of keeping data and making data available, immediately the way we want to collect data becomes better. And so we would be getting better resolution of images. For example, we would be thinking a lot about what all are the other uses of the crop surveillance system which can help us to detect pests and diseases better, maybe create a heat map, maybe do other things. So that is something which immediately brings up. There are a whole lot of other things that we would be talking about, but yes, initially the vision was let's make data accessible and let's kick in the innovation around it.
Thank you so much. You talked about lots of data being collected, standardized, put in your data exchange for usage by multiple stakeholders. Now, while that is very useful, but when you collect such a large amount of data, the issues of data privacy, data protection,
Yes.
they come along with it,
Yes.
especially the compliance with DPDP
Yes.
Act, the compliance with the DEPA guidelines, etc. In your data exchange, which you have built, how are you ensuring that those concerns are being taken care of and the system is compliant with the national and the state level regulations?
So, by design, we are compliant with the laws of the land. We have ensured that it will be in compliance with DPDP, and there is an entire consent architecture around data. We are honoring the entire context of IPs. We have defined data owners, and we are defining the entire rule context around how data is to be exchanged, what would be the permission layers for the data, what would be the way the seeker of the data would be able to apply on it, and how he will be able to access the data. So the whole idea is that yes, you have to be compliant, and also at the same time make sure that because of this assurance of rules and assurance of architecture, everybody feels safe to provide data. Because if you don't do that, there would be a lot of questions around it. Look, why should I give you my data? How will it be safe? How will it be compliant? What if somebody asks me a data and I give it and then I'm falling foul of the rules? And so this entire context and this entire education around it is going on. Now, when a person is given the confidence that the architecture is such that your data is more likely to remain safe there uh, in a common public infrastructure, that then it gives a lot of confidence to the people who might be keeping their data in silos. They might be keeping their data in their uh, personal computers, which might not be a very, very safe way to keep data anyway. It is not also a structural way to keep data. So in that sense, the Agri Data Exchange provides that kind of a confidence to a lot of public institutions and to any private institution who would be also willing to contribute their data.
So basically, are you saying that the architecture of the data exchange builds these kinds of compliances within the design of it, or is it just the regulation?
No, it builds itself within the design of it, definitely.
Okay. Now, for usage of this data, you have provided lots of digital public goods around it.
Yes.
One of them being a sandboxing environment,
Yes,
which
yes.
you're providing to the people. Can you tell us a bit more about what this sandboxing environment is?
Yes.
How a public sector or a private player uses this sandbox, and based upon a requirement
Yes.
of a user, how this sandbox then communicates with the data exchange to provide access to those data sets in a very isolated environment.
So we'll be providing a sandbox which is being built now, and that sandbox would help innovators to log in and to access the data on the data exchange and help to work on various products and innovations that they want to create. Now, the layer before the sandbox, of course, is the appreciation of the data. And so a person can log in and see what is the various data sets available. And thereafter, if a person believes that yes, he has the ability to work around on that data to create certain products in an environment which keeps the data safe also and helps him to play around, he can play around the data and thereafter ensure that a certain prototype or a draft product is built. Now that gives him the confidence to actually try out certain solutions on the ground. We'll be providing certain tokens of the GPU for him to work around on AI solutions in that sandbox. And that would, we believe, create a lot of innovative solutions at very low cost for the system. So this would be very, very helpful in creating an entire ecosystem of innovation by providing first access to data and by ensuring that access to a certain infrastructure, including GPUs, and a safe sandbox is there for him to help. Around it, we will be providing certain open source tools. Those open source tools will be able to help that person to actually use those tools for the context. It could be a tool of generative AI. It could be the tool of natural language processing, etc., etc., around which he can create newer products.
It's great to know that Sandbox is not the only DPG you're
Yes,
providing.
yes.
You're also providing the GPU and compute power
Yes.
as a DPG. You're also providing other open source tools as other DPGs within this. This is very exciting. But say, for example, if there was some innovator who have used the sandboxing environment
And created a product.
created a very innovative
Yes.
product. Now, one of the big issue with lots of these startups is that to scale up those products, they don't have enough funding.
Yes.
And to apply it in a government environment, they have to go through the procurement processes, which are very difficult for a startup.
Yes.
So, just going beyond the data exchange and the sandbox,
What is
in
it?
the larger AI and agri-tech policy which the state has, is there any provision for supporting these innovators or startups
Yes.
beyond just testing their products on your
Yes.
platform?
So keeping that in mind, the state government has provided for an innovation fund, and the call for proposals are already out. And based on that, anybody who has worked on a draft product or a prototype on the sandbox, he or she can actually apply and ask for innovation funding. And if the idea is good enough, I'm sure that it would be funded, and that would lead to a lot of startups coming around, taking their ideas to the ground, testing their ideas on the ground, and will be very well supported by the government. So I think that linkage is very, very clear, that yes, from the data to the sandbox, prototyping, and from the prototyping to apply for proposals, try to access the innovation fund if your idea is good enough, and which would really kickstart innovations across the board.
I think that would be a great help because this has been a bottleneck in many states where innovations do not flourish because after testing at the sandbox, the product stays there and there is no help.
Yes.
It is good to know that this is being provided. Now, my last question about the agri data exchange would be that, when different kinds of people use the data exchange data sets, most of the time in many places we've seen government being a monopoly business. There is not enough emphasis placed on the feedback.
Right.
So, in this data exchange, which you have built along with Sandbox and lots of tools, there would be startups or any other ecosystem players who would want more data sets, different kinds of tools,
Attributes.
depending upon the technology evolution. Do you have any kind of plans to implement this feedback back into the system and improve the system so that it becomes more as a demand side kind of a platform rather than a supply side
Yes.
pushed data exchange?
I think it's a great idea, and we can institutionalize that very, very easily. And the use that I can see is that government data, when it is being envisaged or being collected, it might be focused, as I had earlier said, towards a certain use case. And now, let us say a startup accesses that data, or even if a government department or a researcher accesses that data and says, look, you have a number of attributes, but this particular attribute is missing. This kind of an attribute would lead to a certain kind of productization. Then it makes sense for us to ensure that this kind of a data could be focused to be collected. So it would have a lag time, of course, but once implemented, and if it is feasible, certainly it leads to a very, very robust context of innovation. It might be also that after that feedback loop, we might be knowing that such a data or such an attribute actually exists already, and it needs to be onboarded. So this would really make the agri data exchange richer. So I think it is certainly doable. It should be done, will be done. Yeah.
Now, finally, there's one more unique thing we have seen, which distinguishes what you're doing from many other government-based IT initiatives. So the general practice is to have some vendor on board, get a system developed, and most of the time we've seen you either get into a vendor lock-in situation, or when the funding is over, the project dies down. What we have seen here is that on one side, you've developed lots of in-house capacity, and on the other side, most of these initiatives are being co-created with a large ecosystem of partners from the public sector, private sector, civil society. Can you tell us more about your partners for developing the MahaVISTAAR AI platform, as well as the agriculture data exchange?
Yes. So without partners, this is not possible, and it makes sense that more of us will often do a better job than one of us. And this is especially true in the context of cutting edge technologies. Having the right partner becomes very, very significant as a decision and as a process. And if you do find a partner who is committed, who is there to stay, because this is not a short term process of delivering something, and there is a lot of hand holding required, and therefore a good partner is absolutely necessary. And I think Maharashtra has been lucky in both these projects to have partners who have brought in cutting edge technology also, and have been very collaborative. The cadence of reviews has been very high. We are working for MahaVISTAAR with Ekstep Foundation, COS with the BMGS, and also with a large number of organizations within our domain who have worked literally on a daily basis, on a weekly basis with us, and that is the state agriculture universities, the state departments, the ancillary departments, including animal husbandry department, who have committed a lot of human resources to create these kind of products. In that sense, we have been very, very lucky. And I'm sure that once this kind of a product is made, and this is something which we often see, that we should not look at, in a way, recreating the wheel, because two things happen. A lot of unnecessary wastage of resources happens when we try to recreate the wheel, and in a sense, the energies that we could have devoted to solving another problem, in a sense, gets devoted to solving the problem which has already been solved. So, in a sense, a lot of collaborative contexts have been happening. Bhashini has been a partner. Government of India has been very, very supportive. METI has been very, very supportive of this entire context. The ICR system has been very, very supportive. So this entire ecosystem has helped us create a product which we believe is quite good. Similarly, for the Agri Data Exchange, the IISA has been a partner and has been doing intensive work with us. We believe that we'll be able to build a very, very strong agri data exchange along with that. So the context of this entire ecosystem of supporters, active practitioners, providers of data, each one of these people and those who provide support in the form of ideation, including a lot of experts. For example, I am a project which works very, very actively and is supported by the World Bank. And a lot of people from the World Bank come support us, give us new ideas, expose us to what is happening across the world. It really helps. So this entire ecosystem is something which we should be working at. Collaboration is something which happens when we dare to reach out to people and ask them what would be the most ideal way for you to help us, which would be a win-win situation for both of us. Sometimes partners work out, sometimes they don't. Just for while it might be beyond MahaVISTAAR and Agri Data Exchange, we are working in a consortia project which has the 4 state agriculture universities, the IIT Bombay, the National Bureau of Soil Survey, the MRSAC, and all these people together are trying to work on delivering solutions at the parcel level. Now, this happens, in a sense, it gives a great context that we all are bringing our own knowledge bases. Somebody might be strong in technology, somebody might be understanding domain very well, somebody might be understanding use cases very well. And if we are putting our heads together, a lot of things get done. IIT Bombay, we are working for an image and pest disease identification system, which would be homegrown and which is very, very necessary. So all these things, and very often and very surprisingly, what we are finding that as we start working in consortia solutions, for some of the things that we have started working one-to-one, suddenly I find that the other partner has actually joined and is willing to work pro bono, is willing to provide data exchanges. Even before the data exchange was up, people were exchanging data across universities. So in that sense, once that structure of co-creation happens, proper attribution is given, proper association is given, I think a lot of people are very, very willing to do good work for the national interest too. So I think it's a field which is opening up, and a lot of things can be done which will be good, but with the help of collaboration.
Thank you so much. That was Mr. Parimal Singh, and the examples of cutting edge AI based, LLM based systems created by a government department, not just by itself, but also enabling a large system of partners who are co-creating for transforming the agriculture in state and hopefully in country and beyond country in coming time. Thank you so much for your
It was a pleasure. It was a pleasure, Vikas. Thank you.
Thank you.